Hey guys, it's Megan Aller, Sales Executive with First American Title here in Denver, Colorado. This week we're going to be talking about pricing expectations through the end of the fourth quarter in 2019. Now keep in mind that there's a really apparent cycle for our detached metro family marketplace where we see our inventory peak out typically as we go into those August and September months, but our buyer pool started to taper off back in May. And so what that creates is this period of retraction where we see falling prices that exists from July up until about October. By the time that we get into October, November, and December, our prices typically stabilize for about a 3 to 4 month period before we hit our next cycle run up as we go into February of next year. Now, what this shows is if the blue bar is over the zero mark, we can see prices going up, and if the blue bar is below the zero mark, that prices are typically falling. And this is the projection for 2019, and then as the numbers come in. Typically, what we see for the month of September is we usually end up noting about a 1% taper off in our marketplace. This year, we fell by just a little bit more than that. It came down by about 2%. However, going into October, November, and December, it's either 1% up or down. And so really we call that a flat trend line as we go into the end of the year. What we can expect to see for pricing is if we stay on pace with where we have been, our projection was pushed a little bit higher this year. And so I would typically pull back on that and say that we're probably going to land in that $525,000 to $530,000 mark when everything's said and done through the end of the year. Please keep in mind that that means that our appreciation rate is going to land us somewhere between 5 to 7%, which is still double what a good appreciation rate is here in Metro Denver. Now, our attached market looks a little bit different, and we'll have to see how the fourth quarter plays out. Typically, what happens as we go into the fourth quarter for those attached properties is we see significantly fewer units coming to market, but our inventory doesn't taper off quite as much. And in the last 6 years, that's actually resulted in a slight pop of activity that happens in that fourth quarter where we actually see another little run up in those prices. Typically, prices would go up about 5% extra in October, November, and December. Now, since we have final resolution to builder defect laws, and this is the first year that we've seen some of that new construction making its way to market, it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But September, for the last half of the year, typically represents the low point in terms of our pricing, and then usually we add on top of that for the attached market, seeing that additional pop of inventory. I don't know that we're going to see that this year. It depends on what happens with our inventory levels and if we continue to see that price run up. If we continue to see that price run up or that last little tipping point where we see prices jump up in the last quarter for attached properties, we'll probably land somewhere around the $380,000 mark when everything's said and done for 2019. If we don't see that little pop of activity, we'll probably remain fairly consistent and land somewhere around that $350,000 to $360,000 range. Now, in either case, Q4 is definitely not as strong as what we see in Q2 when our typical market runs up. So if you're looking at your comps for your properties and you only have sales that occurred during that second quarter of the spring run up, please be sure to make a time adjustment so that you're not one of those that sits on the market ultimately having to reduce your price. Thanks so much for tuning in this week. Next week, we're going to take a look at what's happening with days on market. We typically expect those to go up, but let me tell you how much you'll expect to see that as we look at our report for next week. I hope that if we're able to help you better advise your buyers and sellers, that we'll get to meet them at our closing tables at First American. We'll see you soon.